apologize for the delayed start to the event. I think some people are caught up in traffic. You know how traffic is in Bangalore. But very warm welcome to everyone on behalf of CFO India, 9.9 Media and Schneider Electric to this evening roundtable session to discuss energy management. So why are we discussing energy? I think all of us know that, modern society today is highly dependent on energy. Whether it's to eat, live, even entertain or do productive work, you need energy. And as the standards of living rise in developing nations like ours, the demand for energy continuously goes up. And this demand is growing at a pace faster than we can keep up. And the consequences of this are fairly inevitable. We either face shortages or pay more for a scarce commodity. I think I was just discussing with somebody and they were saying, on their campus they've got buildings which are running completely on DG sets and they're paying a lot just to have that energy so that they can just continue to work. And the reason for this is, of course, fairly obvious, that it takes a long while to put in more energy capacity. And also the choices that are available have other drawbacks in terms of, environmental effects or the cost, so it's very nice to say put in solar or put in wind power, but, there's a time and an effort that it takes to get that in place and it may not always be cost effective. But as the aspirations and demands of all our consumers and customers continue to increase, how do we tackle the very real problem of the looming energy crunch? We are going to face this fairly soon. And so what can we do? How can we do more with what we have today? What can organizations do to optimize and conserve energy without sacrificing, performance and productivity? I mean, it's all very well to say stop everything and you save energy. You can't do that. And what do we measure and control when we talk about, optimizing energy? What is that we need to measure and control? So this evening we will examine some of these issues and discuss questions like these with the help of some eminent industry experts. I'd like to invite all of you to participate in the discussions so that we can all gain from the experiences and insights of everybody in this room. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker for the evening. He is Professor Balachandra Patil. Professor Balachandra is a principal research scientist at the Center for Sustainable Technologies at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He has more than 28 years of experience in research, consulting and teaching in the field of energy, environment and technology management. He's an internationally renowned expert and he's a visiting fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School and an empaneled energy expert with the UNDP program. So this evening, Professor Balachandra will be speaking on the topic India's energy future, the needs, solutions, policies and actions. May I request you all to please welcome Professor Balachandra.
Going to present is slightly different from very focused topic on energy management or energy efficiency. But the scenario what I am going to present, energy efficiency or management is an important intervention. But I will give a kind of a broader perspective, where what is the kind of future what we can see in the context of energy for a country like or a developing country like India. Let me begin with showing some of these numbers. I am presenting this as a kind of an indicator. You can use any other indicator to represent Indian economy, but I preferred, this way of presenting. We have something like 90 billionaires. Now, anyway, I am not relying on hypothetical data, but the data is realistic or the estimates are real. There are about 14,700 multimillionaires, and like the number increases. At the other extreme, we have about 750 million poor, 269 million extremely poor. I think everyone needs energy, as you said. So I have said that India's energy future requires to take into account the needs of all. How are we going to do? What are the needs? And second aspect what I want to highlight here is, I think Indian economy is really a challenging economy. It is unique I don't think any other country in the world can represent this kind of hierarchy. In some aspect, it is like sub-Saharan Africa. In some aspect, it is like US. The energy needs also vary, the quality of energy, quantum of energy, the kind of energy what we give. I think a poor would like to have 2 square meals a day, and how efficiently the food can be prepared. Currently, if you see the 750 million poor or 269 million poor, together, they largely depend on solid fuels for cooking. Firewood, cow dung. We don't call that as energy, in our general definition of energy. I think to a large extent we restrict our definition of energy to electricity. Like that way, the demands vary, the needs vary. Given that context, I would classify energy from the point of view of India's future is something like energy for economic development, or we can also call it as energy for economic growth. I think the government of India, the policy makers always talk about GDP growth rate. How do we achieve 8% GDP growth rate, 10% GDP growth rate? What are the energy requirements for such a scenario? And second, we have majority poor. I think the energy needs of them cannot be ignored. Can we have a separate theme called energy for minimizing deprivations? Those who have not seen energy, those who have not seen modern energy carriers, can there be a different strategy? And the third one, I think all of us are aware of, energy for climate change mitigation, where energy management and energy efficiency has a very, very significant role to play in addition to renewable energy. And what I have stated here, these targets are conflicting. And the solutions what we are going to propose, they are independent. There is nothing like one solution for all. Energy efficiency or large-scale coal thermal power plants cannot solve these problems. That's why the choice left for us is a trade-off approach. Can I do something of economic development, some part of minimizing deprivation, and some part of climate change mitigation? And next we'll see what are the implications of this. See, these are the kind of energy future we are looking at. If you see, these numbers are, 2012 or 2013 kind of numbers. The current installed capacity, you see it is about 207 gigawatt, which generates about 877 terawatt hours. And what is the need? I think we need to increase both these by 4 times. Now you can imagine what are the kind of challenges India has. Something like 800 plus gigawatt of installed capacity, something like 3000 plus terawatt hours of energy we need. This is purely in terms of electricity. If you want to achieve a GDP growth rate of 8%. To achieve that kind of a growth, we need to increase our coal demand by 3 times, which implies about 20% import because we have quality issue with our coal. Oil demand will increase by 2.5 times with 90% import, natural gas by 4 times. This is the kind of demand for energy if we want to grow at 8%. I think every one of us want India to grow at 8% or maybe more. The next challenge is for us is, what I have said, that energy for climate change mitigation. In 2010, we were emitting at about 1,600 million tons of carbon dioxide. That is a representative greenhouse gas which has implications for global warming. And if we don't do anything, no renewable energy, no energy efficiency, it is likely to increase by 4 times by 2030. That means in another 15 years. And Government of India has come out with some pledges that they say that by 2020 the greenhouse gas intensity will be reduced by 20-25%. That will result in 5,100 million tons of CO2 emission, which is 3 times the current. And if you adopt the best case scenario, whatever is available in terms of renewable energy potential, energy efficiency potential, we can reach 3,400 million tons. And that will ensure that global warming is going to be beyond 2 degrees centigrade average temperature. That means we cannot prevent global warming. I am not suggesting that only India has to take action. I think that is universally true. I think every country has to take action, and those actions are not going to happen realistically, and we are going to exceed the 2 degrees centigrade level. Because we have economic imperatives, we have poverty imperatives. I think those cannot be ignored for the sake of climate change mitigation. And when we compare, here I have given some numbers, what India is emitting is significantly less than what USA does and what China does. This is another problem, another challenge for India. How to contribute for climate change mitigation. The third challenge is, as I said, minimizing deprivation. I think this is the 2011 census data. I think there were about 823 million, as I said, depending on solid fuel for cooking. Close to 400 million have not seen electricity or largely depending on kerosene for lighting. And we also have other numbers to show that how backward we are in terms of our energy usage. I think, I always argue that, efficiency comes when you start consuming. When you do not have anything to consume, there is no question of efficiency. But on the other hand, we have the kind of, inequality. Those who are consuming large amount of energy, they can conserve so that, it is available for section of population who are not seen energy. That is one possible explanation for energy efficiency. Now, what is the benchmark for India? I think, can China be a benchmark? I think this is a representative figure, and I prefer to call this is India as a sleeping giant. I think if you see pictorially this graph, the shape of the graph looks like India is still sleeping. I think whereas China, you see, both of them almost started at same level, and you can see a rising giant or already a risen giant, in the form of China. I think, can India follow that kind of a strategy? And my perception is it is not possible, because we do not have that kind of a resources, both financial as well as energy resources, to follow that path. And not only that one, global climate change regimes will prevent India to follow that kind of a path. In other words, I think now you can make a guess about India's energy future, given this situation. I think these kind of graphs can be created for every type of energy carrier, oil, coal, natural gas, wind. I think you will see similar pattern. Now, what are the solutions broadly? And I am not going to go into the specifics for each of those strategies. I think for energy for economic development, the important aspect is size, scale and timing. I think we need to have large super thermal power plants or large nuclear power plants, or mega projects, what I prefer to call. And I think India has excellent policies to facilitate such kind of an expansion. But unfortunately, we have good policies on paper, but when it comes to practice or implementation, we have all the difficulties. That is why, what China adds in a year, we take almost 20 years to add equivalent amount of capacity. That's why you see the difference in graph, where one is exponential and the other one is almost flat. So the solutions are known, resources are known, policies are available. The only thing we are lacking is in terms of speed of implementation. This is with respect to economic development. Now, if I take climate change mitigation, the solutions are again well known. I think all of you are expert with respect to this aspect. Renewable energy, low carbon technologies, energy efficiency. If you want renewable energy integration with buildings or other kinds of setups, I think those will solve the climate change mitigation problem. but definitely they will not solve our energy problem. I don't think we can visualize a large scale energy solution emerging from renewable energy. And in terms of policies, if you see, I think India is quite aggressive in terms of introducing new policies. I think India is one of the first countries to have an independent ministry on renewable energy. I think we started from MNES, Ministry of Non-Conventional Energy Sources. Before that, we had a department exclusively focusing on renewable energy before any other country. But again, we have other issues. And India has, introduced policies related to renewable energy integration into the system. There are excellent policies with respect to market incentives, financial interventions, like for example, feed-in tariff, which goes up to kind of close to 10 rupees a kilowatt hour for a solar electricity. You have mechanisms like renewable energy credit trading mechanism, renewable energy power purchase obligation. There are so many incentives, but we have barriers related. Again, I will not, because I think if the time is short, I think you can stop me. And in terms of organizational intervention, you can see, I think the next speakers will be dealing more on these issues. I will not elaborate on this. There are many opportunities in terms of, both in terms of practicing energy use efficiently as well as integrating technological interventions. There are several options available with respect to lighting, air conditioning, with respect to our mobility, many things, And we have exclusive, policies and programs related to climate change. I think all of you must be aware of these aspects, National Action Plan on Climate Change. We have several missions on that: solar, energy efficiency, green India, and we are also coming out with a new program on wind. And there are excellent programs on energy efficiency policies with respect to building, industry and transport, and we have exclusive institutions which has ability as well as capacity to facilitate such kind of initiatives. And if we talk in terms of energy for minimizing deprivations, the solutions again become different. We need mini grid solutions. We need distributed generation. We need off-grid solutions. I think now, you must have got a perspective. If you want to solve India's economic problem, you need different set of solutions. If you want to solve India's climate change problems, you need different set of, and here you need different set of. And I think India, to a large extent, played a significant role in in all these three aspects of energy problems. We had a mega scale program on rural electrification called Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana, and it is one of the largest program in the world, focusing on rural electrification. But I don't classify it as a successful program. When the program was initiated in 2005, the expectation was reaching 100% electrification by 2009. In 2011, if you see, only 65% of rural households were electrified. And now the target has been moved, target of 100% electrification has been moved from 2009, then to 2012, then to 2015, I think now it is 2020. I think that kind of reflects the kind of implementation inefficiencies associated with any program in India. And I feel, as a corporate sector, they have a significant role to play in minimizing energy deprivation. In the current context, largely such programs are being implemented by NGOs or social entrepreneurs, small scale entrepreneurs. I think they lack the business efficiency of large corporations. I think we need, efficient, effective business model implementation even at the base of the pyramid. Only then I think 800 plus million Indians can see or enjoy the benefit of modern energy services. So there are many avenues available for doing a business, and I developed few case studies, and it shows that if done efficiently, there could be high returns. I think there are a good number of examples, like when the businesses felt that even rural poor need to enjoy the benefit of shampoo. I think they came out with shampoo sachets. They wanted to reduce the size of shampoo so that poor can buy that. Or you sell toothpaste in a different size. People cannot buy in 100, 200 grams tubes. You make a small size. I think similar business models can be employed here to provide energy services for the rural people. Now, having said, the complete conflicting strategies required for solving these three major problems or major energy challenges, I think I thought of giving some tidbits kind of thing. If something needs to be done, what are the challenges what we are likely to face? I call it as PPP inefficiency. It is not public-private partnership. What I call as policy on paper to policy in practice. I think very, very ineffective in India. I don't think I need to elaborate that. I think every one of us have experienced, and unless something happens to that, I think many of our programs would become failures. And base of the pyramid business, that's what I have seen, there are no takers. I think you have new age entrepreneurs. I think their preferences, at least what I observe, they always look for profitable exit, not long-term sustainability. I think at least I have seen, always they look out for buyers, not how to perform well, how to do business, and there are no long-term perspectives in the new age entrepreneurs. But we need millions of such entrepreneurs if we have to address the energy challenges of close to 800 billion people. And CSR need to become more active and need to have an important stake if we want to solve the third energy problem of India. And I think in terms of role of organization, I think one should pursue or move forward from compliance mode to cost saving mode to finally profits. Can businesses make profit from serving the poor? I think that should be the motto. That's my dream. Let us hope that something of that type will happen. And I think largely in the sustainability domain, we talk in terms of maximizing shareholder benefits to stakeholder benefits. I think that also need to happen, such kind of a transformation. And there are barriers which kind of creates hurdles for such initiatives. So basically there is inherent reluctance to take initiatives, and these kind of opportunities are not considered as a priority, and most of the interventions related to energy efficiency or energy management or renewable energy is considered as cost to the company, not as a profit. I think that again prevents any kind of new initiatives being taken. And other thing you can give examples for this. Appearance overshadows efficiency. You want beautiful buildings where you absorb heat externally and try to cool that building using heavy air conditioners. Or you typically we don't value mobility of the individual. It is movement of the car which is the priority. So I used to give this example, if you put 100 units of energy into a car, only 1 unit is used for moving that individual, and 99% of that energy goes waste either as heat or in terms of moving the vehicle. I think a marginal or a simple tweaking can result in significant amount of energy savings. One person per car translate, if it gets moved up the ladder to 2 persons per car, I think we can imagine a 50% saving in energy is possible. And finally, India, there is no lacking in terms of policies. We have excellent policies. We have huge documents, giving minute details of the policies. The regulatory mechanisms are excellent. Institutions are there. But the PPP inefficiency has a significant role to play to make any program not so successful. I think I will stop here and thank you for.
So thank you, Professor Balchandra, for a very succinct overview of the challenges confronting the country and the industry, and for suggesting some action steps that could be taken. So it's really food for thought. So thank you so much for being here this evening and sharing your perspective. I'd like to, just quickly share with you, some findings of a survey we did some months ago on the CFO's approach towards energy management in enterprises. Okay, so just quickly, let me just summarize. So what were the sort of top line findings on this? So largely what we found, on basis of a survey was CFOs are mainly involved in tracking costs relating to energy investments and are focused on optimizing expenses. So that is really what CFOs are often doing. And of course, CFOs face challenges in having the necessary resources to deal with energy efficiency initiatives. Even when there are initiatives, they have a resource issue, people issue, just trying to, or even technology issue trying to track this. And CFOs would like to play a key role in the organizational energy optimization effort. I mean, they are interested to play a key role in that. And they would also like to ensure that it spans across all business units, not just a single unit or a single office or a single entity doing that thing. They would like to replicate that success over the entire organization. And most organizations have reported energy cost reductions which are quite small. I mean, it is 10, 20, 25%. It's not a very large savings in them. And the CFOs think there is scope for partnering with experts to have a greater optimization of the existing resources. So there is a role which other outside experts can play. It's not everything we can do in-house. So to speak more about the role of the CFO in energy management, I'd like to invite Mr. Sugata Sarkar. He is Chief Financial Officer for Schneider Electric India. And Sugata has more than 25 years of experience in various industries, including energy distribution, manufacturing of chemicals, textiles and tires. And he's worked as Finance Director and CFO, Country Finance Controller and Managing Director. And he would like to share his perspective on why energy should be on the CFO's agenda and what CFOs can do to manage the energy challenge. So over to you, Sugata.
Right. So good evening to you all. And, thanks for coming down on a weekday evening. I understand, what it means with the kind of pressures we have in April. And of course, with the traffic we have in Bangalore. All of us keep attending these forums, CFO forums with Anuradha's 9.9 or with others, where we, keep talking about the CFO's role in strategy and CFO's role in governance, etc., etc. So this is a little different, This is a little different. It's about energy management because it's becoming critical and important in the running of business, enterprise, or actually in our personal lives as well, as Professor Balachandra just said. So today we'll talk a little bit about why it's important for us, how it's becoming relevant in business, etc. And so Schneider Electric is partnering this session because this company is about energy management. So I'll just take 2 minutes to tell you a little bit about the company. It's a global company, 25 billion euro revenue. In India, we are present in about 76 cities. There are number of manufacturing locations, 29 of them. There are 21,000 people. Number of commercial offices. We have a large R&D center here, 1,500 people. 45,000 outlets, selling points, and about 2,000 plus partners, business panel builders, system integrators, distributors, etc. So the businesses that we are in range from low voltage to medium voltage equipments and solutions to automations in building, in industry, data center solutions, including UPSs, cooling solutions, etc. Now, going on to our main thing, and what I'll try and do is I'm going to talk about a little bit about the global energy outlook, which comes out every year, and this one is till 2035. So the next 20 years, the global energy outlook, and we picked up a few elements from there to see how it's relevant for us, and then the India context, and the CFO's role in the energy strategy or in energy management in each of the businesses that we work in, and how it's getting relevant, and some inferences where I'll basically leave you with some ponderables which you can think about later. So if you look at the global energy outlook next 20 years, the foremost thing is that the global consumption of energy is expected to grow by 41% in the next 20 years. And 95% of that growth is expected to come from the non-OECD countries. So what that really means is the OECD countries remain more or less flat in energy consumption, and the non-OECD countries are going to increasingly consume energy in the next 20 years. China is the highest contributor, no surprises there. But India's consumption also grows steadily, and by 2030, the growth of energy consumption starts matching China's. So it's going to become very significant in another 15 years' time. That's one of the pieces which comes out in the energy outlook, right? Now, if you think about the sectors which are going to contribute to this consumption growth, one is industry. Industry is the biggest sector which is expected to contribute to the industrial growth. Heavy industrialization in China, India, rest of Asia become the major drivers. Another significant slice is services, residential and agri. So services is all the IT services, the hospitality, life sciences, all kinds of services which is growing hugely in the developing world. Urbanization which is happening in the developing world, and automation and agriculture. So these are the main consumers or drivers for consumption growth in the next 20 years. Now, which are the fuels which are going to bring about that consumption growth? So even in the next 20 years, it's still dominantly fossil fuels, right? It's going to be coal, gas and oil. However, renewables and hydro and nuclear are going to grow significantly in terms of growth rate because they are starting from a low base, right? Now, coal remains a dominant fuel, has a 25% share in 2035. However, the consumption growth starts slowing in the last part of that decade, because what happens is that gas becomes more available and industries start moving away from coal and going into gas because of emission reasons and availability reasons. So gas becomes significant at 31% share in 20 years' time and starts replacing coal as industries move. Oil, the growth rate is smaller than coal and gas, but still retains a pretty large share, and renewables, hydro, etc. grow from a large base. Fossil fuels remain dominant. Now, one important factor which comes out is that the global production increase more or less matched the global consumption growth. Yeah. It is in terms of energy consumption figures, not financial. So, so production growth globally matches consumption growth over this 20 years period, which basically means that the demand supply gap which we have today remains pretty much the same overall. Of course, within fuels, the dynamics of prices keep changing depending on the availability and demand of each fuel. But overall, the demand supply gap continues as what this outlook foretells. If you look at the region-wise split of growth, if you look at the energy net balance, which basically means whether a region is in the net an importer of energy or exporter of energy. So if you look at the bottom part of the graph, you see that Europe remains an importer of energy as it is today. Next 20 years, the size does not change very much. Asia becomes a much larger importer of energy, remains a net importer of energy globally. US, that is North America primarily, starts moving from a net import of LNG today, by 2018 it becomes an exporter of energy. So it crosses over in 2018, mainly because of shale gas availability and the large reserves of gas that they have found there. And Middle East, Africa and others basically remain the providers of fuel to the rest of the world in the net. So those regions remain net exporters, while Europe, Asia Asia especially become a much larger net importer in the next 20 years. So now what is the India context out of this? We are a major energy consumer in Asia, and we can see that Asia is a major consumer in that region in terms of consumption growth. Our energy consumption growth matches China's by 2030. Fossil fuels remains dominant. Now the sectors which are driving global consumption growth in Asia and these parts of the world, those sectors are very prevalent and dominant in India. Industry. We're expecting very heavy industrialization in the next 20 years with the Make in India starting off now. Urbanization is expected to be huge in India. I mean, one figure is 4,000 cities in another 10 or 15 years maybe. Services, we know about that. I mean, IT services, life sciences, hospitality, these are tremendously growing sectors in India. So India remains a part of that huge consumption growth which are driven by these industries in Asia. Demand supply gap remains. India remains negative in energy balance, remains a net importer of energy. So the question we need to ponder on is, what do we think these factors should have an impact on price and availability of energy? Now, as I said, I mean, within energy there are different fuels, and for each of those fuels the dynamics of price, availability and demand are different. So while on the whole demand supply gap remains, there are short-term opportunities between fuels. So at times you might be able to switch from coal to gas, at times you switch from oil to coal, etc., and you might take advantage of solar or wind or whatever. So toggling between fuels is an opportunity which we might have, but overall, this is where the pointers are going. So in that context, as you know, we always keep talking when we meet in our forums how CFO is the strategic driver, etc. So CFO in the cockpit and so on. We've been talking about it for the last several years actually. So now if you think about whether we are driving strategic value or not, one of the primary facts is that when we build a strategy, we are supposed to ensure how we can de-risk that strategy. So manage the risks around that strategy, identify which are the factors that we must drive so that we improve the chance of success. That's a major role that a CFO is supposed to play. And then when we try executing that strategy along with the business team, we are supposed to identify the key drivers which will improve the chance of success and which, if not done well, can improve the risk of not reaching the business goals, right? So if you think about it that way, if you think about key drivers for strategy, operational efficiency becomes a key driver, because whatever the market strategy is, because whichever market we play in, whether it's premium, premium, medium, whatever it is, whichever segment, the internal strategy is to be more and more efficient. And why operational efficiency is a key driver is because that's where you really challenge yourself and see how much better you can be. Yeah, and that's a lot in our own control, right? So operational efficiency is now becoming a base for any competitive company, because competitors are doing it, and you need to introspect. So that's how I link operational efficiency as a key driver. And then if operational efficiency is a key driver, energy efficiency is a KPI, key performance indicator within operational efficiency. So if I look at operational efficiency, and I'm becoming industry agnostic here, it doesn't matter which industry we are in, primarily you look at material efficiencies, manpower efficiencies, energy efficiencies, because these are critical elements which we can control. Now, energy efficiency, if we try measuring, we have usage per unit produced, per customer served, per space utilized. Different industries have different ways of doing it. I have a bit of slice on that later on. And then cost per unit of usage. Why do we need to do this? One, energy is significant. And what's in our control in energy? Is the choice of fuel in control? maybe. At times it's in control. If I am a large industrial unit, for instance, I might decide to generate my own power, not take it from the grid, and when I generate my own power, I might go with coal, I might go with gas, I might go with different. So sometimes the choice of fuel is a choice, and between fuels I can toggle and manage my cost in a short-term basis. I've been in the gas industry, and what I've seen is customers keep switching from coal to gas, gas to coal, coal to fuel, etc., to grid and back, because these are all short-term arbitrages that you can have, the opportunities which you can have. But it's there at times. Price of fuel is something on which we have hardly any control, because it's market driven, because as a country and as a region we are net importers today, and outlook shows that we might remain so for future. And usage is therefore one area which we can control always if you know how to do it. So while we talk about all this, the world in the meantime is changing. When I say it's changing, it's basically that the more efficient companies, the best in class companies are waking up to this and taking advantage of the energy efficiencies which can be taken. So if you look at an iron and steel industry, the best in class energy consumption can be in the range of about 6,900 per ton, while the average is about 9,700. It's 30% lower than the average. Similarly, in a commercial office, if you think about the cost per square feet per month, it can be 75% lower compared to average consumption. And these are real data from Indian scenarios. Hotels, again, square feet per month, it can be 50% lower. Hospitals per bed month can be 50% lower. So the best in class in each of the industries are waking up to this and taking the measures which are taking them that much ahead of their competition in their industries. How does it happen? Primarily, when a new facility is designed, whether it's an industrial facility or a commercial facility, it can be an energy efficient design which builds in the facilities and equipment in a way which conducts energy in a way and which helps in consuming in a way which is optimal. Secondly, the approach of measuring the lifetime cost of energy. So we are used to looking at, okay, what is my power bill today, what is my energy bill today, and okay, if I switch to coal, how much would it be? That's one way of looking at it. And the other way of looking at it is, okay, when I'm going to look at 10 years ahead, what are the opportunities I have, what is the ROI from investments that I might make on energy efficiencies, on energy efficient designs, etc., and what is the lifetime cost of the energy which I have if I invest, and what is the lifetime cost of energy I have if I do not invest in the such so an approach of looking at that. And the survey which was done recently shows that there are some companies in each industry who have this approach, and a lot of companies don't. And the third, of course, is the ability to measure and monitor the usage of energy. In a commercial facility, today it's possible to have smart solutions to measure and monitor energy consumption in each area, in each equipment, in industry, in each sections of the plant, etc. So this is the approach and change in approach required for us to start thinking about how energy can be critical in the way we manage it as a KPI. Another evidence that the world is changing and people are waking up to it. Energy intensity, which is measured as a portion of the GDP which is consumed. So the proportion of GDP which is the energy consumption. So what is the energy we need to consume to generate the same goods and services? And that has been a declining trend. Not today, since the year 2000, if you see a chart, all the major regions in the world, India we've shown separately, but otherwise world, EU, China, US, it's a decreasing trend. So energy per unit of GDP is reducing and is expected to reduce over the years. Why does it happen? Because people are conscious of the fact that there is a large cost to energy and there are solutions available. However, if you look at carbon emissions per capita, and Professor talked about it, it's a kind of a mixed bag. If you see the next 20 years outlook, there are regions like the US where the carbon emission per capita is expected to reduce, but China is expected to increase, India marginally increase. So the world carbon emissions per capita goes down marginally. Why does this happen? While there is so much consciousness on energy, why is there lesser on carbon emissions? One obvious fact is that we are all quite money minded. Carbon doesn't have too much of a price today. But the question is, what if carbon had a price? And you can see the global conversations around carbon today. I think the end of the year there is the COP21 where they are again talking about it. So when we plan ahead, we also need to think what if there is a price to carbon and then it hits us. So carbon emissions is one thing to look at. But overall, the energy intensity is going down. Industries and governments are waking up to this. So we need to ask ourselves as CFOs as to where we are in our businesses in waking up to this. So as I said, I'll leave you with some ponderables and some inferences. So global energy outlook indicates that India and Asia remain major consumers. The demand-supply gap remains, which would obviously impact prices. There could be opportunities in changing fuel mix, which I personally think is short-term toggles. The best in class in each industry are waking up to this and adopting energy management as a critical efficiency driver. And the world is moving towards lower energy intensity and carbon intensity. CFO strategic role includes driving operational efficiency, hence energy efficiency, but how do we do it? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. What are the solutions available? What is the cost? What is the economic feasibility? Why we should do it, etc. And I'll leave you with that. So thanks again for your time and attention.
So thanks for those insights, Sugata. I think that's given some plenty of food for thought. So, I'd now like to invite Alok Deshmukh, he's General Manager for Energy Efficiency at Schneider Electric. And, by qualification he's an architect. He's worked overseas and as a consultant and now he's with Schneider Electric. And he's going to discuss a little bit about how energy management solutions can help CFOs get a better understanding of the effectiveness of energy solutions and how to measure the ROI of energy investments. So over to you, Alok.
Thank you. So while we get the presentation up, a reaction to what Professor Balachandra said, I just wanted to kind of talk about that. To me, energy efficiency is actually the key, even though we might be talking about independent solutions to different sets of problems, to profitable climate protection, what if there is a price on carbon, to energy security and to energy access. But we need to think about this a little differently, and that is what I'll talk about in the first part of my presentation here. To Sugata's examples on the 30 to 75% gap between best practice and what we have as average or business as usual. It's like we need to think about energy efficiency as the main course and renewable energy as dessert, or the source of energy as dessert kind of a thing. And in the second part of my conversation, of my talk, I'll just talk a little bit about success stories and best practices. So that's how I'm going to kind of just go through this. So how do we need to see it differently is that if I were to ask, and this is where I see the conversation needs to go, is that the cheapest, the cleanest and the most abundant source of energy, if I were to ask a room of any type of people, very rarely will they answer saying that it is energy efficiency. And why is that? Because it is not used, therefore you don't need to generate it, and it's a negawatt, right? A negative watt. What does it cost? Nothing. And when done right, it can actually come with a very compelling business case. And I'll talk about a few of the business cases, what I mean by that. So we did this quick kind of analysis. If we were to treat energy efficiency as a resource, how would that look in terms of comparing to other resources? So at the top there, the lowest cost per say kilowatt hour would be energy efficiency. Now a little abstract, let's look at some of the examples. So the short paybacks that come with energy efficiency, these are a couple of the audits that we've just recently completed. So in both of these, one is a textile plant, one is an iron and steel plant, or rather it actually produces pipes and plates and coils with iron and steel. And for both of them, we were looking at, somewhat modest in terms of percentages, but the cost of energy as a portion of their operating cost is pretty high. So even 3%, 5% is very attractive to these customers. And for both of them, we are looking at a 15-month effective payback on these measures. And this is not just, doing an audit. We've actually even had performance guarantees and performance contracts that we've done for a customer of ours, where we started with energy management, but then undertook a 61 million rupee turnkey project that included critical power, zero downtime, seamless transfer between fuels, and we guaranteed 72 million savings over a 3-year period, which came down to about 2 million per month. And since June, since the performance period has started, the execution was over, we've been actually saving 2.6 million per month. And now the customer says, okay, I get what you're doing, I don't want you to give me the performance guarantee, I'm going to go straight to your solutions. Another example, Infosys is kind of like the gold star for building energy efficiency. They develop about 2 million plus square feet of office space every year in India. One of my old friends who used to head greening initiatives at Infosys used to tell me that, we may well be the largest commercial developer in India. We just do it for ourselves. And, they, over 5 years, achieved an energy spend of rupees 5 per square foot per month. Over a 5-year period, they transitioned to rupees 5, and business as usual, what Sugata showed, is around 14 rupees per square foot per month. So obviously people want to know that it must have cost you a lot to do this, right? And their answer would be, well, actually over that corresponding 5-year period, they've had a 0 increase in construction costs. And